Good evening and welcome to Community Homeworks Workshop this evening. I'm glad you're joining us. My name is Jason Byler. I am the Education Manager here at Community Homeworks. And tonight we are going to be talking about gardening. It's great to see some nice warm sunshine out there today. And even if it is a little chilly, but we want to talk about gardening and what we can do to help people get started on their gardens and have success in their gardens. We're primarily going to be talking about gardening with vegetables and fruits, but we will have some information about flowers thrown in there as well. Community Homeworks is a nonprofit organization here in Kalamazoo, Michigan. We have a mission to empower homeowners to maintain safe, sustainable, and dignified homes. So we want people to have a safe place to live. We want people to live in a place that they are proud to live. And Kalamazoo is a great place to live. If you have questions during this broadcast tonight, please put that down in the comment section and we will try to answer those questions a few different times during the workshop. If we can't answer them, we will get back to you on that at a later time, but we will try to answer as many of those as we can. Our presenter for tonight is Mandy Dixon. And Mandy is actually not with us live tonight. Let's see if I can get Mandy's screen to come up. Oops, that's kind of what I wanted. There we go. Mandy is not live with us tonight, but she has some pre-recorded videos that we're going to be playing to get us started on with seeds and with gardening. Mandy normally does do this workshop live, but she was not available to do that live this evening, so we're doing it recorded. I also wanted to thank the Portage District Library who recorded these videos and allowed us to use them for our workshop this evening. So thank you, Portage District Library. Once again, if you have questions this evening, please put it down in the comment section down there and we will try to get you an answer in between the different segments. We're going to be seeing 3 different segments today. The first one is called seed starting, and that's basically starting your plants from seeds. Some plants we should have already started, some we can start now and still have success with. Otherwise, we can buy plants as transplants. And the second segment will be called Garden Plan Essentials. That's planning your garden, where you're going to place it, what you want to grow, those types of things. And then this third and final segment will be actually planting the garden and making sure that we have success in that as well. So I'm glad you're joining us, and we'll turn it over to Mandy.
Hello and welcome. My name is Mandy Dixon. I'm an MSU Extension Master Gardener, and this is Gardening 101 webinar series. This is the Seed Starting Guide by Portage Library. Let's get started. So why do you start from seed? Well, starting from seed gives you a much better selection of plants. You can pick anything from your grandmother's heirloom tomato to a melon that you've just seen come out, to striped squashes that you've never seen in a greenhouse before. It also gives you a chance to do something when it's snowing out and you can't do anything else garden related in the actual garden. It may be cheaper. It may not be, but it may be depending on what you put into it. And it is fun, but it's not for everyone. And it does require specific setup and care. And there could be extra costs involved that may make it more expensive. It just depends on how you are approaching this. We're going to talk today about how to make it as little expense for you as possible. So what do you want to grow? Grow what your family enjoys. Grow what you're passionate about. I grow about 20 different varieties of tomatoes because that's what I love to grow and that's what I love to taste and that's what I love to put in sauce, and that is what I am passionate about. So if you're passionate about a certain flower, grow that. If you love heirloom tomatoes, grow those. If you want to make your own pickles, grow cucumbers. Grow what your family enjoys. Or not. Don't grow cats. That's a much advanced class for gardening than this one. So keep that to the professionals. When do you start your seeds? Now we're going to calculate this out for you so you have a better idea of how you can determine when to start your seeds. If you start your seeds too early, you're going to have to keep them indoors for a lot longer than you really want to. They could get root bound. The goal is to get them outside at the right time. So we're going to read the seed packet, and we're going to know the growing zone and the frost-free dates for this area. Now in the Kalamazoo and Portage area, the growing zone is 6A. So if you look at the little maps that are sometimes on those seed packets, it'll tell you start from May to June in this area. And that'll give you an idea of when you can start your plants. But it helps to know the estimated last frost date, which is May 15th. So that's the time when you have less than a 50% chance of having frost. Now, the last frost-free date, which is when you have less than a 10% chance of having frost, is May 27th. So I typically wait for my peppers and tomatoes to get them out closer to the end of May. Now, to calculate when you should start those seeds, you're going to base it on that frost-free date of May 15th. And if you're running late on these seeds that we talk about, don't worry about it. There are plenty of things you can put directly in the garden that'll get you started, like your squashes, your lettuce, your peas, your radishes, your carrots have to go directly in the garden. You can start spinaches right now. So this stuff will start right in the garden without you starting any indoor time at all. Now, why do you grow flowers? Flowers brighten up your mood. You can have beauty outdoors and you can bring it indoors in a vase, or you can just make your own patio containers of the flowers you love the most. Save money by making your own arrangements. But why grow vegetables? Well, you can save money. You save that trip to the grocery store for those green beans or lettuce that you want for dinner. You know where your food is grown. You know you didn't put any pesticides or chemicals in your food to grow them. And you can reduce your carbon footprint. Your food to table is only steps away. Your garden is outside your back door, your front door. And you don't have to have that trip in a truck for your vegetables to get to your table. So the seed packets are where we're going to start. If you don't have a seed packet for some reason, do an internet search and you can find the information right on the internet for the varieties of seed you're trying to grow. So looking at these seed packets, this is a mini bell pepper mix. And you can see there's a lot of information on the seed packet. But on the back, we're going to focus on the little information that tells you how to plant these peppers. So you're going to plant them 1/8 of an inch deep. When you thin them, which is when you plant them out, you're going to plant them 18 to 24 inches apart. They have to go in full sun. They only grow up to 24 inches tall. And they mature 60 days from the transplant time. So from the time you actually can get them in the garden. But you can't get them in the garden until after the last danger of frost. And you're going to want to start them indoors 6 to 8 weeks before that last frost date. So if we say that last frost date was May 15th, if you backtrack, you should have had those in your seed starting trays by the middle of March or the very beginning of April at the latest. But here's your radishes. Now radishes are a quick growing vegetable. Radishes you directly sow into the garden when the soil warms in the spring or the late summer for fall picking. You plant them a quarter inch deep, 1 to 2 inches apart, and they will mature in 22 days. So from the time you put them in the ground as a little teeny seed, you'll have a full-size radish in 22 days. That's definitely farm to table and perfect for your salad. Now, if you've got some seed packets laying around and before you go and throw them out, those seeds might still be viable. You can test them by doing germination tests. To do a germination test, you're going to place those seeds in a moist paper towel in a covered container like a Ziploc bag or a Tupperware, something that's covered and sealed, and then put it in a warm environment on the top of your refrigerator, on the top of your cable box, on the top of your aquarium if you have one, whatever you have that's a very warm area. And then you check every couple of days. So these are some seeds that I germinate tested. I put them in there about 5 days ago. And as you can see, these are green bean seeds, and every single one of them have germinated and they have a little root system coming on them. Now these seeds are my green beans and they're from 2012. That means when I go and plant them in the garden this summer, that I should have a very good germination rate because I have 100% that came on this test. And they're from 2012, so that means I can use some of my older seeds up without worrying about not having any plants grow. Now, if you do your germination test and let's say only 50% of those seeds come up, you can still use them, just plant them heavily. So if you want 10 plants, you'll want to plant about 20 seeds because you expect to get about 50% germination. Now, to start seeds, there's some basic equipment that you're going to need. You're going to need some form of container. Now, if you have those seed starting trays with the lids and the base for water, use those. Those are great. Otherwise, you can use alternative containers. So if you see, we have just a margarine container. You can use that. Just make sure you put drainage holes on the bottom because you don't want to make your seedlings soggy, and it's better to water from the bottom. Or you can use toilet paper tubes. If you look, they take those toilet paper tubes and they cut them in half, and then they make 2 shorter tubes. And once you've got your shorter tubes, you can just cut the little ends to make little tabs. And when you fold in your tabs, like it's a cardboard box, now you've got a perfect little container to fill with soil and put your squash seeds, your tomato seeds, your pepper seeds right in the container. And you'll water from the bottom because you're going to stick this whole thing in a plastic tray of some sort. Now you're going to fill all of these containers, whatever ones you're using, with soil. Make sure that soil is moist completely. You'll have to make sure that it's completely moistened from the top to the bottom and not just on the top, because that's the way your plants have a place to go for their root systems. You can either do that before or after you put it in the pots, whatever's easier for you. Sometimes I find it easier to moisten the soil before I put it in those containers, but other times it's easier to do it when it's in, depending on the type of container. After you've got your container filled with soil, you'll want to add your seeds. Space them out as your package states. Add a small amount of soil on top of those seeds and pressing them in lightly, unless the seed package says otherwise. There are some seeds that require light to germinate, so those you won't cover with any type of soil. To give them a little bit of moisture on top and get them starting quicker, you'll want to lightly mist with water. I find a spray bottle works really well for that process. Now make sure you label everything. Labeling will give you a reminder of what you put in those containers. When you go to plant things out, you'll want to know what they were so you know how far to space them apart. Like your peppers we talked about, you'll want to space those 18 to 24 inches apart. So you're going to find a warm place to put your seeds. Keep them covered with plastic until they germinate. If you have those lids for those seed starting trays, use those. If not, you can certainly use plastic wrap, and you'll want to uncover them as soon as you start seeing those seeds poking out from the soil. Seeds require a constantly moist environment, but they don't want to be soaking wet. You'll want to use a potting soil and not dirt from your garden, because dirt from your garden may have pathogens that could kill those seeds. So after the seeds have started germinating, though, remove the plastic like we talked about. You're going to bottom water for the best results. So take that tray, pour the water in the bottom, and let it soak up from the bottom into your seed pots. Warmth will speed up your germination, and after they sprout, light is the most important. So if you have your fluorescent shop lights, you can use those. Those just need to be a few inches above your plants, and you'll want to raise them as the plants get taller. But if you don't have that, you can use a sunny windowsill. Just make sure you turn the containers every day and keep an eye to make sure they've got enough light. If you don't have enough light, your plants will start getting tall and they'll be what we call leggy, which means the stems are very skinny. And those plants can fall over and they're going to be very difficult to transition to the outdoors. In about 3 weeks, you can use a water-soluble fertilizer and very dilute, put in a little bit of fertilizer to help them grow. Now, if you want to get started, let's use some science-based resources to give you additional information. As we all know, if it's on the internet, it must be true. Well, there's a lot of old wives' tales out there, and there's a lot of false information, and we hear the words fake news all the time. It comes true with gardening resources as well. So make sure you're using science-based resources. Here's a few to get you started. We've got a Gardening in Michigan site that's hosted by the MSU Extension. They also have a smart gardening site, which talks about being water conscious and low pesticides and using much more environmentally friendly methods of growing. The MSU has a selecting and starting seeds indoors, which will help you get these seeds started. And there's also a great program called Ask an Expert. Now, this Ask an Expert website allows you to go on there anytime of the day, 24/7, and type in what your question is. So if you want to know what's happening to your seedlings, you're having an issue with them, just type in your question, and one of the expert master gardeners will get back with you within just a day or two and give you an answer to your question and help you along with improving your growing experience. Now, if you do have any questions, feel free to reach out to any of those or to us, and we will get you started. And I hope everyone enjoyed this and go out and get growing. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mandy. That was great. I hope you got some good advice there. I really like that idea of using the toilet paper rolls to start your seeds in. So that's something I'm hoping to do this year, hoping to start some that way. I realize that I'm too late for some of the things, but I'm still hoping to get some things started before that frost-free date that Mandy talked about. So if you are also thinking of doing that, hang on to your toilet paper rolls or come up with another container that you can use to get your seeds started. It's a great idea. We're now going to move into Mandy's second segment, and this is called Garden Plan Essentials. If I can get my mouse to work right, we're going to be talking about planning your garden and what you need to be thinking about for that. So let's see what Mandy has to say about that.
dust and disease buildup that is going to be in that soil for that specific type of plant. Now, if you can keep families away from that area, that would be even better. So for example, your nightshade family, which includes like your potatoes and your tomatoes, shouldn't be put in the same spot. So don't put your potatoes where you put your tomatoes this year. Allow enough space for full-size plants. You need to plan to have space for the full-grown version of your plant. So if you're growing a tomato, for example, that tomato is going to get at least 3 feet wide, but the seedling's only 2 or 3 inches wide. So you need to plan accordingly. It's going to go from 2 to 3 inches to 2 to 3 feet. And you can also consider succession planting. So if you plant those radishes we talked about in the first video, that only takes about 30 days to grow and harvest, you can put in another plant right after that. But keep in mind, just because you have a big space doesn't mean you should fill it full of plants the first year. We'd suggest you start small, match your time and ambition, and get a feel of how much time the garden is going to take for you. So how much time is it going to take you to plant, to weed, to water, and to harvest? And be aware if it's out of sight, out of mind. Because if you don't see it on a regular basis, you don't see it daily, you're going to lose track of it and things are going to fall to disrepair. And your plants aren't going to do as well because you won't have your care. And your pest problems could become quite big, quite fast if you're not paying attention to it. The other thing is for spacing, make sure you aren't putting plants too close together. If you put 2 plants close together, like you can see with this Swiss chard, neither plant's going to get as big and as healthy as it could. And you're going to have more pressure from diseases because it's not as healthy from nutrient sources because they're competing with each other. Now you can grow some more in less space with a square foot garden. And this is one of the methods that is more of intensive planting. It is a raised bed. You use only the amount of seeds you need in each of these square foot blocks. So as you can see, you've got a raised bed and they've put lines in it, little partitions in it, so you know where the 1 foot spacing is, and it helps you space your planting. So here you can see for each 1 foot square, you can put 1 broccoli, or you can put 4 leaf lettuce, or 9 bush beans, or 16 carrots. And you'd only put 1 seed in each of those little grids in the spacing as suggested, and you'll get a full harvest from that 1 square. Now, a raised bed is just a really big container, but if you do want to do smaller containers on your deck, let's say you have a balcony, you can still do grow in containers. First, you want to make sure your container is big enough to hold your mature plant, whatever the size of that plant may be. You need at least 6 to 8 inches of root growth. So that's how deep your plant must be at minimum. Deeper is probably better, but at least 6 to 8 inches. Now keep in mind your small containers will dry out more quickly than your larger containers, so you will need to water them more often. And because nutrients are consumed quicker in those small containers, you might have to fertilize more. Now, color is kind of helpful to know. In the summer, those dark containers will absorb more heat, which means you are going to have to water them more often. Otherwise, you could potentially damage your plants. And light containers reflect the heat, so that does help them stay a little bit cooler in the summer and not dry out quite as fast. Here's some containers to help spur your imagination. They're a combination of various vegetables and flowers in beautiful bright buckets. So this is a really fun way of getting some variety on your deck and still getting something to grow that you can eat. And here's another selection of various plantings. So you've got the radio flyer wagon, and you've got a wheelbarrow, and even just a bag of soil that someone cut up in the top, loosened up a little bit, and put their tomato in there. You've got gutters hanging on a wall for a beautiful shady summer salad. You've got those big totes that you can use, or a kiddie pool, and of course the fun community vehicle. So the old car that they filled up full of plants in the community garden. Now, if this gets your motor going and you want a little bit more, some additional resources are here. We all know the old adage, if it's on the internet, it must be true. Well, we suggest you stick with science-based resources so that you do know the information is true. So here's a few sites that'll get you started. We've got a Gardening in Michigan site, a soil testing site that'll help you walk through that soil testing process if you want to get that started. A smart gardening website that talks about keeping the amount of water or reduce the amount of water that you're going to need in your garden and reduce the amount of chemicals that you're relying on. There's square foot gardening information if you want to learn a little bit more about that method. And then there's the Ask an Expert option, which will give you a way to ask your questions and have someone actually respond to you, an expert in that area. I want to thank you, and I hope you enjoyed, and go garden.
Great. Thank you very much, Mandy. I appreciate your advice with gardening. And I wanted to apologize. Apparently our sound wasn't working for part of that video. And I wanted to thank Monica for letting us know that so that we could troubleshoot that issue and take care of it. So hopefully the sound was working at least at the end. And I will try to make sure that doesn't happen again. And I'll try to get you a link so that you can watch that entire episode as well. Again, I wanted to thank everyone for joining us. This is Community Homeworks. We are doing Gardening 101 tonight. We are talking about basically how to start seeds, how to start your garden, how to plan your garden, and actually planting your garden is our next episode. And Mandy will be bringing that to us in just a moment. So let's see, where's Mandy this time? Let's see. There she is.
Hello and welcome. My name is Mandy Dixon. I'm an MSU Extension Master Gardener, and this is the video 3 in the Gardening 101 series hosted by the Portage District Library. On this episode, we're going to focus on planting your garden. So let's begin. Your frost-free date is this is a refresher. You plant your vegetables based on the frost-free date and some of your flowers too. You need to watch for frosts after this date, but the Kalamazoo Portage area estimated frost date is May 11th. That's when you have a 25% chance of frost after that date. So if you want a refresher, go back to the last video where we covered this information. But basically, you can plant after that date, but you'll have to keep an eye on the weather. Some plants want you to wait at least a week or two after that date. Some plants can be put out a couple of weeks before that date. So just keep an eye on the weather and watch your seed packets and your plant tags. Before you can put them in your garden, in the ground, you'll want to harden your plants off. So over a 1 to 2 week period, what you're going to do is move the plants outside to a shaded, protected area. Now, what this is doing is it's adapting the plants to the outdoor environment. When they were inside, either in the greenhouse or in your house, they had a climate-controlled environment. They never got too cold. They never got too hot. They stayed nice and comfortable. And outside, it's going to be a little different. In fact, your plants can get sunburned by getting too direct sunlight before they're hardened off. So this will help you prevent those shocks and that sunburn. So what you're going to do is you're going to put them outside in that shady area for an hour or two to start. Then you increase that every day. So maybe day 2, it's 2 to 3 hours, and then 3 to 4, until you get them used to being out there all day long. Make sure during this process they're well watered. But as soon as they've been outside all day long for at least a day or two, you're good to put them in the garden, assuming you can keep an eye on that weather as well. Now, there are certain things that lend itself to planting directly in the ground. They do fantastic with that. They don't need transplants. Those are things like your radishes, your beans, your lettuce, cucumbers, peas, carrots, things like that all like to be planted direct from seed. And you'll get a full-grown, healthy plant right from that seed. Some things need a little more time than Michigan gardens will allow. So your tomatoes and your peppers, you usually will have to start from a transplant because they just need a longer season than we have available here in Michigan. Your onions, you'll want to use sets usually. Cabbages, herbs, things like that. You may need a little more time than we have here. So those are things that are ideal candidates for transplants. So if you've grown yours by starting them inside, you've already got those. If not, you can start off by going to the greenhouse. And the greenhouses in the area will definitely have some of what you need. Now, if you're going to plant those seeds, first, you've already determined where to plant them based on our last video. So you're going to smooth the surface of the bed that you're going to put them in, make a row or indentation to plant those seeds. Then you're going to place the seed in the hole or the indent, depending on the seed variety. It's usually about 2 times the depth of the seed, unless the seed packet says otherwise. You're going to cover them, ensure good seed to soil contact, and then make sure you water. Water thoroughly. This is a good drink for those seeds to get started. Now, if you're going to do a square foot gardening method, here's some of those layouts we talked about in the last episode. So for example, your carrots, if you're going to have your 1 foot worth of carrots, you can put 16 carrot seeds in place and you'll get 16 carrots if they all germinate. But you can also do a square of bush beans and you can fit 9 of those in 1 square and have those squares next to each other if you need to. But that way you get the plants you need for your family. Now, if you're going to plant your transplants, first you're going to go and dig a hole. You're going to mix in a little bit of fertilizer, making sure you're in the right spacing. Fill that hole with water unless the ground is already moist. If you're planting the morning after a rain, you probably don't need to, but it depends on the type of soil you have. So make sure that soil is moist. If you're using a pot, make sure that pot is large enough for the full-size plant. For example, if you're going to do a standard size tomato, you're going to need to make sure you have a 5-gallon or greater plant container in order for that plant to thrive. Now here's a little video of a basic transplant. This is a Lycium. First, you're going to dig that hole like we were talking about. I've already gotten fertilizer mixed into this soil. So then you're going to loosen your plant out of your container of the transplant that you're doing. I sometimes pulled it upside down to make it easier to let gravity help me get it out. Make sure you're holding it by the top of the plant and not the stem so that you don't break that stem off. Loosen those roots and break some of them. If they're root bound and circling, you'll want to break some of those roots and tear them a little bit so that way they start regrowing from those tears. Put this plant in the hole, firm in the soil lightly, and then water it well. After this water, I made sure I watered it 1 more time after this. But you need to make sure that plant is watered very well. So in recap, remove the plant from the pot, separate the roots, place it in the hole, fill it with soil, gently pat down, ensure good soil contact. And for your planting depth, make sure you match the soil level of your transplant to the soil level of the place you're putting it. So if you're putting it in a pot, make sure the level of the dirt in your pot matches the level of the dirt of the transplant you're putting into that. And same with your garden beds. Now there is an exception. Tomatoes love to be planted deep. If you notice on the tomato stem, there's those fine little hairs. All of those hairs can turn into roots for you. So if you plant them deeper, those hairs will turn into roots and that plant will have an even larger root system, which makes for a stronger, healthier plant. As soon as you get those plants in the ground, you're going to want to stake them up if appropriate. You'll need stakes, tomato cages, netting, whatever you're going to do to support the plant. Do it now so that you're not wrestling with it when it's a full-grown plant. This way it's ready to go and you won't have to fight and break off leaves and branches in order to get that tomato cage on or those stakes in place. Now, several types of vegetables and fruits and flowers like to grow on vines, and they do great growing vertically. So vertical helps you if you have a small garden. It's an efficient use of space. It allows you to grow more in a small space. The square foot gardening method talks about growing vertically all the time. It also offers support for tall plants. So if you have something like a tomato, they definitely need some caging so you can tie them up. And it allows for clean veggies. If you're doing things like cucumbers that are not sprawling all over the ground, you're going to have nice, clean cucumbers. So there are several different varieties that can grow up. And here's just a few examples that are great for vertical support. Things like your cucumbers, your pole beans, your melons, your peas. Those all do great growing up and off the ground. You can see a couple different types of support systems here on this slide. Now, after you get everything in and you get it all supported and staked appropriately, now what? How do you keep these plants growing strongly throughout the season so that you get those harvests and the flowers and the vegetables that you're hoping for? Well, first is basic garden maintenance is water. We talked about water previously. Your plants need at least 1 inch of water a week. Some will need more. Some may need a little less, but that's your goal, is 1 inch of water a week. So you can use a plant wear rain gauge. A rain gauge can sit on your porch. You can say, oh, we got rain this week, and you can look at how much you got. The other day we had 2 inches in one day, but then another time we thought we got a lot of rain. It was only 1/4 of an inch. It just rained really hard for a short amount of time. So you just got to keep an eye on that gauge. Drip irrigation, if you have it available, it's ideal. You can use soaker hoses. You can use hand watering. The catch is making sure you're watering deeply, because the more thoroughly you water, the deeper that water goes and the longer your roots will grow to go after that water, which is better for the plant. The larger the root system it is, the healthier the plant. So you're going to water in the morning if you can, especially if you're overhead or hand watering, to help prevent those diseases that occur when you have a lot of wet leaves in the overnight hours. Mulching will help retain moisture so that you can keep up with that 1 inch of water a week and not have to do a lot more when it gets really hot. Weeding, you have to weed. I know it's not fun, but weeds compete for water and food from the plants, so they'll detract from your and harvest from your vegetables, and they'll reduce the amount of flowers you'll get. It's easier to pull them when they're small, but if you mulch, you will have a lot less weeding in place. So I really encourage mulch because it helps with water retaining moisture from the water. It reduces the amount of weeding you have to do. Once your plants are established, you'll want to fertilize them. If you don't have a soil test, and you didn't finish one, go ahead and do a general purpose fertilizer for now. Work those granules into the soil, water them in. Now, for pest control, there's a lot of different types of pests, but one of the things we focus on with smart gardening is using your integrated pest management, which means use the minimum method needed to handle the pests that are causing damage. If you don't have any pests, don't go out and spray a pesticide across your whole garden. If your plants are doing great, don't use a pesticide. If you have, for example, holes in your cabbages, look for those cabbage worms and remove those cabbage worms by hand. Don't go and spray if you don't need to, if that's all you have. If you have an issue with one specific plant, figure out what the problem is. And if you need to spray for that specific pest on that specific plant, go ahead. But don't spray the whole garden with a massive pesticide just because you have one issue. So use the minimum method needed to handle pests. If you choose healthy plants, you're going to have a lot less problems. The healthier a plant is, the less pests and diseases they will have. So if you go out to the greenhouse and the garden centers and you're picking up a plant, flip that plant over and look at the underside of those leaves. Always look at the underside, because I found plenty of times we found eggs, aphid eggs, on the undersides of those leaves, different kinds of pest eggs. Don't bring those pest eggs into your garden. Let's say you bought those plants, you brought them home. Check your plants when you're ready to plant them in the ground, so that you make sure, oh, I missed this when I was in the greenhouse, or it wasn't here when I was in the greenhouse, but it's here now. Get rid of all those pests before you put them in the ground so you don't bring the problem home. Use good sanitation practices. Disinfect your pots. Usually you can use a solution of water and bleach. Disinfect your pots, disinfect your tools. Make sure you're not spreading diseases from one plant to another. It's time to plant my garden, or as the local bunnies call it, my all-you-can-eat buffet. It's a true fact that those rabbits and those deer like some of the same vegetables and plants that we do. So there are methods and techniques you can use to help reduce that impact. The big one is exclusion, appropriate fencing. There are different repellents. I'm not going to talk about them here. Some work really well, some don't work at all. There's also unappealing varieties, certain bulbs that deer don't like at all. But to learn more about this area, because this isn't my area of expertise, go to the Smart Gardening website. I'll show you the Smart Gardening website again. This is a very specific article that I found on smart gardening with deer, how you can create your design for your garden to reduce the impact of deer have on it. So it's worth a look. But if you go to that Smart Gardening website, they'll have several other types of articles too. So look through that and see what works for your specific situation. We talked about mulch before. I'm going to reiterate mulch because mulching is so critical to help you reduce the amount of time and hours and work you have to put into your garden. It improves the soil. It provides nutrients. It prevents weeds. It keeps the soil cool in the summer, but warm in the spring and fall. It conserves water. It reduces disease, eliminates cultivating. You don't have to use that rototiller, and it improves production. All of these things lead to why I strongly recommend you mulch. But while we're talking about mulch, make sure you do it the right way. You need to put it on thickly, but if you have, for example, a tree here, you don't want to put that mulch right up against the trunk. You can make your mound along the drip line of the tree, but not right along the bark. Because if it's on the stem of the tree, that encourages pests and diseases to go right in through the mulch, from the mulch directly into your tree stem. Now here's some of your resources to help you continue on your gardening journey. A reminder that if it's on the internet, it must be true. We all know that not everything on the internet's true. So make sure you're using science-based resources to make sure you're using the best information available. So here's some of those science-based resources for your help. So there's the Gardening in Michigan website. There's the soil testing information in case you do want to get that soil test to help you out. There's the Smart Gardening website, which I talked about a little bit for the pest management. Square foot gardening will help you if you want to tackle smaller beds in a different way to plant. And then there's always the Ask an Expert. If you have a question, go to that website, enter your question in, and someone will get back with you with an answer and help you point you to the right direction. I hope this was helpful, and I enjoyed spending this time with you. Go ahead, get out, get gardening, and I look forward to hearing about your success.
Thank you very much, Mandy. I appreciate that. Mandy always has a lot of great knowledge to share with us, so we appreciate her taking the time to spend time with us. So we do usually have Mandy in the classroom with us when we're doing this class, but she was not available tonight, so the videos had to be enough for us this time. So, but we still appreciate all the information that was contained in there. Those videos were made possible by the Portage District Library, so we wanted to thank them for allowing us to use those, and also to thank Mandy for taking the time to make those videos. Again, I wanted to thank everyone for joining us this evening. If you have any questions, make sure you put them down in the comment section. Even after the broadcast, if you're not watching this live, you can still put your comments down there, and we will still get the questions and we'll reply to them as quickly as we can. Next week, we are going to be back in person in the classroom at 812 Bryant Street in Kalamazoo. We will also be once again broadcasting over YouTube and over Facebook Live. So if you want to come out and join us in person, you can do that. You will need to register first. So head on over to our website, communityhomeworks.org, and you can register there for in-person classes. Next week's workshop will be homeowners insurance. We're going to be we will have a homeowners insurance agent with us. Kelly Peters will be here, and Kelly would prefer if people would bring their policies with them so that she can help you understand what you are covered for and what you are not covered for. We all need homeowners insurance, especially if we have a mortgage. We can't get a mortgage without homeowners insurance. but we should also have it to protect us, even if we don't have a mortgage, to protect our investment of our home. So come on out, bring your homeowner's insurance policy, and Kelly will help us understand what we need in our policy, what we could have removed from our policy and save some money, or all that sort of thing. So we will look forward to having Kelly join us next Tuesday at 6 o'clock, just like we did this evening. Again, I wanted to thank everyone for joining us this evening. It was a great time. I learned a lot about gardening, and I hope you did too. I will put the links to the individual videos down in the comment section as well, because I know we had some sound issues with one of those segments. And I apologize for that, but I will put those links down there and you can check those out in just a moment. Thank you very much for joining us. Have a great evening. Bye, everyone.